Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I'm Joe Mendoza, Captain of the Sheriff's Information Bureau. We're here to discuss the latest developments in the Dijon Kizzee investigation. The order of speakers will be the Sheriff of Los Angeles County, Alex Villanueva, and then it will be Homicide Bureau Captain Kent Wagner. At this time, I would like to introduce the Sheriff of Los Angeles County, Alex Villanueva.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I want to give you a quick update on the ambush case out of Compton. The investigation is progressing. It's progressing well. The investigators are following numerous and substantial leads, and we have not yet identified the involved suspects, and no arrests have been made for the shooting. Investigators are trying to locate an individual, and if you see towards the top of your screen there, let's go on to the next slide. That individual who was standing in the walkway when the shooter ran by, that person is a witness. And I can say now the total number of money has been pledged between actual reward money and private pledges is now up to $640,000. For the care of the deputies, between private donations and the ALAS Care Foundation, a GoFundMe account, that number is swollen to $800,000. So the outpouring of support from it throughout the nation has been overwhelming, and I thank each and every person. And hopefully, one will be able to provide long-term care for the recovery of both deputies involved. The male deputy is out of the hospital, recovering at home. The female deputy still remains hospitalized, and also for the apprehension of this cowardly suspect right there. Now, moving on to what we're at here today for the Dijon Kizzee investigation. I wanted to give some perspective of the community prior to the homicide Captain Kent Wagner providing his information on the specifics of the shooting. The Westmont community was dubbed by the LA Times back, I believe, in 2014 as Death Alley. And we're going to show you a slide here. This slide is going to be for crime statistics just for the year 2020, from January, there we go, from January forward. As you can see, there's 12 homicides in this 1 mile radius, and the center of the dot is roughly where the deputy-involved shooting of Dijon Kizzee occurred. Now we're going to move on to the next slide. Keep that in mind. These are assaults with a deadly weapon with the use of a firearm in that same area, and also that's from January to September of this year. Look at the amount of shootings. These are all violent assaults with a deadly weapon. Now the third slide you're going to see, these are all arrests of individuals with handguns, with firearms. Overwhelming majority are gang members. Now we'll take a look at the fourth slide. This is what this community looks like. Unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of the residents of this community are upstanding, good, honest, law-abiding citizens, hard-working, trying to survive. They're surviving almost in a war zone, as you can see. This is not your average community across America, unfortunately. So when somebody asks what we're doing in this community, or why we're stopping, why we're detaining individuals, this should give you a very clear idea what we're doing and why we do it. We're trying to save lives, plain and simple. We're not out there terrorizing. We're not there racially profiling. We're not engaged in systemic racism of any kind. We're trying to keep people alive. And it's a very tough job, particularly when we're defunded, particularly when we have all these different issues about the staffing levels out there in patrol, particularly when the Board of Supervisors nixed our summer enforcement team program, and all of the community programs that keeps us working with the youth in the community, trying to prevent them from engaging in crime or joining gangs, for example. All of these programs have been eliminated because of the budget. It has an impact. And as you can see, our challenge is enormous. Our challenge with the community is enormous. So we're going to continue working day in with every single member of the community, trying to find ways to keep them safe and keep their kids out of harm's way. So with that, I'll turn it over to Captain Kent Wagner from the Homicide Bureau.
The Oversight Committee wants you to resign. Can you respond to that? Thank you, Sheriff. My name is Kent Wegener. I'm the captain of Sheriff's Homicide Bureau. I'm here to provide details and show videos related to the deputy-involved shooting of Dijon Kizzee on August 31st, 2020. Because of this investigation is in its early stages, details may change as more information is gathered. On August 31st, 2020 at 3:14 p.m., deputies attempted to detain 29-year-old Dijon Durand Kizzee for a traffic violation as he rode his bike east on 110th Street in South Los Angeles. Kizzee refused to stop, fled on his bike until he fell, abandoned his bicycle, and ran from deputies north on Budlong Avenue. The deputies returned to their radio car and began checking the area for Kizzee. At the time of the encounter, Kizzee was prohibited from owning or possessing any firearm as a condition of a restraining order which was in place and active, and because of his criminal record as a convicted felon. However, as Kizzee fled, he was in possession of a loaded 9mm semi-automatic pistol wrapped in a piece of clothing that he carried as he ran. The deputies located Kizzee on 109th Place west of Budlong Avenue, still unaware of the fact that he was in possession of a pistol. As they drove adjacent to Kizzee, the passenger deputy exited and attempted to detain him. Kizzee briefly raised his hands with a green towel in one hand and a red and black jacket in the other as he moved away from the deputy. The pistol was concealed. As the deputy closed on Kizzee, he lowered his hands and struggled with the deputy, ultimately throwing punches into the deputy's face. During the struggle, Kizzee's pistol fell to the ground between him and the deputy. At this moment, the deputies saw the gun and drew their pistols as Kizzee stopped, bent over, reached back, and picked up the pistol. Each deputy fired at Kizzee, striking him several times in the torso, causing the gun to again fall to the ground. Kizzee fell to the ground, and a combined total of 19 rounds were fired. Additional deputies and LA County Fire Department paramedics responded to the scene and provided emergency medical care for Kizzee. However, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives from Sheriff's Homicide Bureau responded to conduct interviews, follow up, and process the scene. Represented from the Internal Affairs Bureau of the Sheriff's Department, the Office of the Inspector General, and the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office Justice System Integrity Division also responded to view the incident scene. A neighborhood canvass was conducted in order to locate and interview witnesses to the incident. Those interviews were audio recorded and will be included in the completed investigation. Investigators also located several sources of video recordings from both fixed positions and handheld recording devices. Many of these recordings have been published on mainstream and social media platforms. These videos will be processed by experts in order to obtain the best quality possible for analysis. The videos will ultimately be included in the completed investigation by Sheriff's Homicide and available for review by the other independent investigative agencies. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is in monitoring this investigation, and agents have met with investigators and reviewed the video evidence collected to this point. On Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, a post-mortem examination was performed by the Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner coroner. The autopsy report has not yet been completed or published. Dijon Kizzee died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds. He sustained several wounds to the chest, both arms, and one wound to the back, as well as a grazing wound to his head. The details of the trauma and toxicology reports will be contained in the completed coroner's report. The Ruger 9mm semi-automatic pistol recovered at the scene was loaded with 15 live rounds and is at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Crime Lab for forensic testing. These tests will include visual inspection, functionality, serology, and fingerprints. We know that the pistol is a stolen gun from Las Vegas, Nevada. It was reported stolen during a residential burglary in February of 2017. As part of the investigation, the cellular telephone of Dijon Kizzee was forensically reviewed. Videos were discovered which show Kizzee in possession of that same pistol days before this shooting. We know that it's the same pistol because the video actually reveals the serial number on the firearm in Kizzee's pocket. Today, we will be showing some of the evidentiary videos and photos in order to provide some insight into the sequence of events as we currently know them. Keep in mind, as additional evidence is discovered, laboratory results are made available, and additional witnesses are interviewed, the facts of this case may change. The first video shows Dijon Kizzee riding his bicycle on the wrong side of the street and the involved deputies attempting to stop him. He then makes a U-turn in front of the deputies, drops his bike to the sidewalk, abandons it, and flees on foot. Notice that he has clothing in his hands as he flees. The second video shows Kizzee running north on Budlong Avenue from the deputies, still holding the clothing. The deputies do not chase him, but return to their patrol car. The next video shows the shooting itself. It is graphic in nature and may be difficult to watch. Although it happens quickly, you will see one deputy approach Kizzee on the sidewalk as he attempts to distance himself. Kizzee's arms are in the air briefly, still holding clothing in each of his hands. He struggles and ultimately hits the deputy in the face. At one point, Kizzee's pistol drops to the ground. He bends over, reaches, picks up the gun, and is shot as he stands with the gun in hand. You will see that the deputy struggling with Kizzee does not arm himself until Kizzee bends down to pick up the gun he dropped. The second deputy joins the first, and the deputy involved shooting occurs.
Can you describe that in real time, please, so we know because we can't really see?
Kizzee is down, approaching the sidewalk. The deputies are driving adjacent to him. As the deputy gets out, he takes off. He hits the sidewalk and comes towards us as we view it. The deputy parallels and then approaches him on the sidewalk. And this is when the struggle ensues. He bends over and he is shot, and down he goes. The next video shows the end of this incident in slower motion. Because it's an enlarged view, the quality is not optimal. It shows Kizzee bending and reaching to pick up the pistol and the resulting deputy-involved shooting. It'll take place in front of that truck. He stops, reaches back. We've frozen it there as he begins to bend over. He bends over, picks it up, and that's when the shooting occurs. This photo shows the pistol recovered at the scene. It was a Ruger 9mm semi-automatic pistol loaded with 15 live rounds. The final two videos were discovered on Kizzee's cell phone and shows Dijon Kizzee armed with that same pistol a few days prior to the incident. We are able to read that serial number.
Was there any audio on that?
There is.
Can you tell us what he was saying?
It's a rap song with a lot of F-bombs and N-word being thrown around, so we decided not to play the audio.
It's just a song itself.
Yes. Once completed, the criminal investigation of the deputy-involved shooting will be forwarded to the district attorney's office to determine if the force used by the involved personnel violated any criminal laws. Once that is concluded, the LASD will evaluate the actions of the personnel within the application of policy, procedures, and tactics. I'll take any questions.
Captain, so what was the traffic violation? What started this thing?
As you saw, he was riding his bicycle on the wrong side of the road, splitting traffic.
So
That's the traffic violation, yes.
And I understand the deputies had to flip a U-turn, and then that's when he dropped the bike and ran, is that correct?
No,
Turning
that's
around?
not exactly correct.
Okay,
So as in the first video, the deputies are going the same way as Mr. Kizzy. He flips a U-turn, comes up on the sidewalk where he crashes his bike and takes off on foot. At that point, the deputies are getting out of their car and they go towards him on foot. They don't turn around and go checking the neighborhood till he's long gone.
Were these deputies familiar with Kizzy?
No, at this point, there's no indication that they knew who he was.
What's the delay with the autopsy report to be publicized?
You're going to have to ask the coroner about that.
But you would know, right?
It's not done.
What's taking so long?
Ask the coroner.
You haven't asked him why it's taking
It's,
so long?
this is the normal pace of time. Coroner autopsy reports are not done in a expedient 1 week time period. It often takes many weeks or months for us to get them. So it's an involved process, and if you've ever looked at an autopsy report, it's very detailed. And it's one doctor, transcribing all his notes from the actual examination. And plus there's forensic toxicology reports that they're probably still waiting on the analysis for. That's included in the coroner's report and the final autopsy report. So it takes a period of time.
Let's make a reference because given the importance of the case, perhaps.
I understand, they're all important.
where did he live? Where was his residence?
So to say specifically where he was laying his head, I don't have that information. I know
You know where that video was shot? Him?
I have my suspicions, but it's not confirmed. I know that he frequented the Antelope Valley area. He had a criminal case pending out of Antelope Valley that involved an assault on deputies and bringing narcotics into the jail. That was scheduled for preliminary hearing, I believe, just 2 weeks ago. So he did have a domain up there in the Antelope Valley that he stayed at, but I believe he also stayed in this neighborhood.
And I apologize, Captain, if you spoke earlier about it, I was trying to take notes. What was the felony for that he was, what was his previous felony?
He's had several. At this point, I'm not going to go through his rap sheet.
That's fine, but were they all
But
in
yes.
LA County or were they in other areas?
They were all the ones that we were concerned with were in LA County, and there were include firearms violations, narcotics violations.
And so he wasn't known to the two deputies he encountered that day, but he was known to the department or other investigators in the department.
Not that I've spoken to firsthand, so I can't answer that question.
So in terms of the wounds to him, you listed several wounds he received. You said, is that the totality of the wounds he received? I'm sorry.
So because the coroner's report, the autopsy report, is not finalized, I don't have the exact reports. I have notes that were taken by our investigators who attended that autopsy, and they took notes regarding some of the obvious wounds and passed that on to me. I said several in the chest area. They could not give me a number because they weren't plotted and included in a report yet. So I don't have that. When the autopsy report is published, the exact wounds will be documented within. Yes, ma'am.
When you look at that map when you look at that map that's behind you, do you believe that you potentially spared some other criminal act because this happened?
I could speculate all day. The man was armed. He wanted to get away from deputies. He armed himself with a handgun, and this resulted. I could speculate all day at what result.
I just want to clarify, he bends down, he actually picked up the gun,
Yes, ma'am.
he made contact.
The interview with the principals in this investigation, the shooting deputies, both said he put his hand on the gun, picked it up, and the second deputy didn't even recognize it as a gun until it came up and he saw the barrel pointing at him.
Is there any video to corroborate
Just what you see. The wall obstructs it somewhat, so you can see his actions. You can't get a clear view of the gun. Subsequently, obviously, there was a gun there laying on the street, which was documented and photographed.
And in this, since there's no audio, we didn't hear anything, Captain, were commands given by deputies, and did Mr. Kinsey have anything to say? I mean, was there any dialogue?
There was no dialogue, commands were given, and there is no audio on that video.
What is the exact vehicle code, and what was the deputy's intention? Did they want to stop him to notify him, or actually ticket him, or what were they going to do?
You know, I can't tell you the exact vehicle code. It's driving on the wrong side of the road. It's the same thing as it is for a car. I don't know that off the top of my head. And I don't know if their intention, because I was not part of that interview, whether they intended to cite him, warn him, or just contact him. You know, I don't know.
And just to be clear, he was splitting traffic, so he was.
Yes, as you saw in the video, there was a car coming westbound. He went on the wrong side of the street around that car as the deputies were trying to stop him, and he continued.
So he was,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. So, when he fled on the bike, they went back to their car, did they try to, like, how did they find him again the second time?
So they drove around the neighborhood, and there were individuals, citizens, who pointed him out and which way he went, and they followed the citizens.
Sheriff, since with this new information now, can you now tell us a little bit, now that this is all out public, and you did mention, I'm sorry, Sheriff,
We're going to do Spanish now, sir, and then we'll come back.
okay?
Thank you. And thanks for your patience. Y gracias por su paciencia y por toda su atención. Ahora vamos a aquí platicar en español. Esta conferencia es para dar a conocer los detalles del incidente del 31 de agosto, en donde Dijon Kizzee perdió la vida después de un tiroteo con los alguaciles. El 31 de agosto, a las 3:14 p.m., oficiales intentaron de detener a Dijon Kizzee por una violación de tráfico mientras iba en bicicleta en la calle 110 en la área del sur de Los Ángeles. Kizzee no se detuvo y trató de escapar hasta que se cayó y abandonó su bicicleta. Los oficiales regresaron al vehículo y empezaron a buscarlo en la área. Cuando esto sucedió, el encuentro de Kizzee no podía tener una arma en su posesión debido a su récord criminal. Sin embargo, portaba la pistola semiautomática de 9 milímetros y estaba cargada. Los oficiales no sabían que él llevaba la pistola. Cuando los oficiales lo localizaron, un oficial intentó de detenerlo. Kizzee levantó las manos brevemente. En una mano tenía una toalla verde y en la otra una chaqueta roja y negra, y la pistola estaba escondida. Cuando el oficial se acercó, Kizzee bajó las manos y se forcejó con el oficial y le pegó en la cara. En ese momento la pistola de Kizzee cayó al suelo. Cuando vieron la arma, los oficiales inmediatamente sacaron sus pistolas y Kizzee se detuvo, se agachó y recogió la arma. Los oficiales en ese punto dispararon a total de 19 veces. Los paramédicos respondieron, pero Kizzee murió. Los detectives de homicidio respondieron y tomaron cargo de la investigación. Testigos también dieron su testimonio. Se recuperaron varios videos, como vieron aquí a mi derecha. Y todo eso se va a usar en esta investigación. También el FBI está monitoreando la investigación. El reporte de la autopsia aún no está completo, pero él murió de causa de los disparos que recibió. Sabemos que la arma fue reportada como robada en febrero del año 2017 en una casa de Las Vegas. Cuando se recuperó la pistola, estaba cargada con 15 balas. Como parte de la investigación, se revisó el celular de Kizzy y como vieron estaba una foto de la arma. ¿Tenemos preguntas?
¿Por qué la demora con la autopsia? Le había preguntado al teniente, pero no entiendo por qué ha demorado tanto esa autopsia, aunque él dijo que es normal que haya tomado ese tiempo.
Sí, mire, el coroner es una agencia totalmente separada de nosotros y pues, los detalles de por qué está tomando tanto tiempo nosotros no lo sabemos, porque ellos lo hacen particularmente sin nuestra nada de que nosotros le pedimos. Ellos no nos piden nada de nosotros, ellos hacen su autopsia y ellos nos la dan como en semanas o a veces 3, 4 meses, no sabemos. Pero el tiempo de ellos es todo diferente, es otra agencia. Okay, thank you.
Questions in English?
The sheriff will take a few questions.
Deputies been involved in shootings before?
Hello?
Have you ever, I'm sorry, have either of these deputies been involved in shootings before?
Well, one of the two is a trainee on patrol, so early out I doubt him. The training officer I do not know.
Sheriff, we were talking earlier about, the question I was asking before was, now that all this information's been given by the captain, what is your message now to the public? Now that you've given this information, as you promised, you said last week this was gonna come out, but it's out there now, and what's your message?
Well, we have to compare this information. These are facts. These are facts as we know them. Contrast that to the messages being communicated by people on Twitter. 5 minutes after the shooting, somebody announced that he was shot 20 times in the back. 5 minutes after the shooting. And then you had a lot of people just piling on that it was an execution, assassination, he was murdered, he was running away and shot, and the facts do not support any of that.
Well, 19
So,
shots.
if you saw the amount of time it took to fire 19 shots, it was probably in a span of 2 or 3 seconds, the entire shooting. So when you say 19, this is not slow motion, Hollywood movie.
But I know, but the point is, that people heard 20, and they said 20, so that was pretty close.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But can you talk about a little bit? You obviously presenting this to establish some sort of a narrative, and what are you trying to tell people about showing us this stat first, and then having the captain come up with and review the other?
Well, I think it provides a context. Deputies are out to making contact with people in the community, the people that they perceive. For example, a minor traffic violation that led to somebody that ends up being armed, and that's part of the narrative, the people who are actually committing murder, committing assault with a deadly weapon, and are armed to the teeth. So it's just a grim reality. That's all it is. So that's, again, it goes against the narrative. Some people are trying to say that we're singling out people for some type of harassment. No, we're just trying to keep people alive and safe. That's all it is.
Sheriff, in regard to that gunfire, we've heard
Oop.
some of those videos where we hear a flurry of gunshots, and then the last few, there's a long kind of intermission there. Do you have any thoughts on what that was about?
Wait.
There's a pause before we hear the last few gunshots on that video.
There was no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, she's talking about, it goes bang, 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 and then there's a pause, and then bang, bang, as if there was if I may.
Exactly.
Yeah, that after the shot
That
was fired, there's a.
you'd have to sit down with the actual deputies involved and go frame by frame to get the exactly sequence of events. I couldn't answer that.
Just saying.
Sure.
But just recognize if you start to the finish, the total time of shots fired is probably 2 or 3 seconds. And remember, the brain is going to register information, then make a decision and react to it. So it's not instantaneous that you change your mind and do something different. There's always that lag time between what you see and then you register it in your brain and then you decide to do something else, and that comes out to an actual movement of the body. So they're not robots, they're human beings, so that just gives you a prime example of that. Someone,
Let me ask you, the Civilian Oversight Committee, I know this is stepping a little bit out of the subject, but they were asking for your resignation.
Mhm.
I just want to know what your opinion on this, what's your take on that comment? dealers that answer in Spanish as well.
Well, I heard comments to that effect, and I haven't listened to the commission's what they've said, and obviously we've been very, very busy. We have the Bobcat fire evacuations going on right now in Palmdale. We have the ambush investigation we're overseeing. We have the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Oversight Commission, they're a political body appointed by the Board of Supervisors. They're just a part of the echo chamber of the board, and unfortunately, the route they take is not one that's going to engender a goodwill and, between myself or the organization, because there's a fine line between being a watchdog and an attack dog, a political attack dog. And that's pretty much the line they've crossed along with Max Huntsman. In fact, they crossed the line a long time ago. This is just the latest example of that. We're here, we're obligated to stick to the facts, not to create political spin. And that's just a reality today. So,
¿Nos puede decir lo mismo en español, por favor? Están
Sí.
pidiendo su renuncia algunos de los dealers.
sí, están pidiendo renuncia, pero yo no he estado prestando atención a lo que están diciendo, porque ellos son motivados por una agenda política, aparte de la Junta de Supervisores, y eso ha sido desde el comienzo. And I'll give you a prime example. Where was the outrage of this Oversight Commission when we had an assistant sheriff, number 3 person on the department, driving around in a stolen vehicle? Was there any calls for resignations from that Oversight Commission, from that Inspector General? This is the same people. The only person that changed was the sheriff. So it's a double standard. So I'm just going to ignore it, move on. I'm going to continue serving the community, and I just have to set that aside.
Sheriff, when the shooting happened,
Mhm.
the department maintained that Mr. Kizzy had made a motion toward a gun. Now you're telling us that he had a gun in his hands when the shooting occurred. Why the discrepancy?
Actually, it's not a discrepancy at all. He did make a motion towards the gun. He actually recovered the gun and pointed it at the deputies. What happens at the very onset when the shooting occurs, the deputies involved give what they call a public safety statement to their supervisor. Hey, this is basically what happened, and I shot this way, so we need to account for all the rounds that way make sure no one is harmed downrange. That had nothing to do with the shooting. So they have to count for all the rounds fired. That's that public safety statement. And that is information. It ends right there, and that is what's first presented when they're trying to give the preliminary information. It's always subject to change, just like any investigation. And now when we sit down and interview the deputies in detail, we get to pick apart the entire thing, and we have a lot clearer picture. So now we have focused in clarity. We can see, okay, there was a lot more involved, and now people that thought that this was an execution, a murder, realizing now there was 2 deputies doing a very difficult job, and they're very fortunate that they weren't on the receiving end of that weapon.
Who told you that he made a motion toward the weapon, and who told you that he had the weapon in his hand?
That was part of the preliminary statement that the deputies provided at the time. The information about everything he did is, I just learned this when I got the briefing on what happened. Because remember, this is a very recent event. I believe it's 2 weeks old now, roughly? That's it. So this is a ton of information that you'll never get in the span of 2 weeks. So my bid to be transparent is to push out as much as we can, as early as we can. The only limitations are interviewing the involved deputies and information like that. That's why we don't release coroner's reports until we've done all the interviews, so we're not tainting the process. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Sheriff. You mentioned that a vehicle stop led to this, and he was armed at the time. It sounds kind of like stop and frisk, the way that you're mentioning.
No, not at all.
Why not?
No. Stop and frisk is definitely a violation of the Fourth Amendment, because you have to have a reasonable suspicion to detain someone. And that stop and frisk, for example, NYPD was caught doing that. They had no reasonable suspicion. Once you do a traffic violation, you automatically have a legal standing. You have reasonable suspicion to detain. And when the person flees, a normal person is going to stop, talk to the deputies, say, my bad, and that's it. They may have a conversation. The deputy might say, hey, you know what? I need you to be on the right side with traffic so people can expect you there. Otherwise, we have, unfortunately, a lot of times people on bike And people coming out of driveways are looking in the wrong direction where the bike is, and that's how you end up with these crashes. So this is just plain safety.
Last question, one more question.
Given the seriousness of the crimes that you showed in that area, what do you say to people that wonder, why stop someone on a bike for something as minor as you mentioned?
Well, I would ask people, how on earth do you expect us, all those arrests are made with people with guns? They were made lawfully, they were made based on reasonable suspicion to detain, and then they formed probable cause to make the arrest, and they recovered firearms. This is a very dangerous community, unfortunately, and my heart goes out to everyone who lives there and have lived there a long time. It's tough. It's not easy. So we have to be as judicious as possible, and if something looks like it's out of place or wrong, that's what elevates people's curiosity, deputies' curiosity. They're trained to be proactive in the right way. They don't racial profile, but they will criminally profile. If it looks like something that's out of place, something is wrong. And for example, a guy wrapping his hand in a towel, yeah, he was hiding a gun in it. So that's a dangerous part of police work, because we're the ones sticking our neck out to figure out what's going on.
Was there a description on the witness you were looking for on the other incident? Because you showed the picture. Did you get any detail on who you're looking for on the witness?
No, we don't have a description. That's all we have is that video. So we know that person is there and saw the suspect run right by. So we really want that person to come forward and let us know.
Do you have a cleaner shot of that, or is that the only shot you have of that witness?
That's the best shot we have of the witness that I'm aware of.
If you try to zoom in or whatever, you don't have enough detail, right?
Yeah, if you zoom in, it's going to get all fuzzy, unfortunately.
Any ethnicity, gender, anything?
No,
No?
that's as best as we got. I want to thank everyone.
Sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.